So I'll give you some stats. Actually, I was working with this with one of our client partners, and the analysis revealed that 8 in 10 orders go through some kind of a change between apheresis and manufacturing. And on an average, those number of changes per order, they go as high as 8.5 or 8.6, something like that.
Wow.
Now, that is a issue if you haven't planned for the what if scenarios. And there are multiple points along that value chain where these scenarios or issues could arise. And so there are several of these, to answer your question more directly, there's several of these specific vulnerabilities that I've seen, but let me list out maybe the top 2 or 3 of them, right? So one is patient and manufacturing scheduling. As we all know, CGT supply chains are very patient specific, capacity constrained, and very time sensitive. So a missed slot is not a planning metric. It can directly affect patient outcomes. The second big piece of vulnerability is data fragmentation. Many companies still run CGT operations across disconnected systems or across legacy systems that were owned and implemented by the larger biopharma back in the day. That fragmentation is it's not just inefficient, it is a scaling ceiling. It's a big issue. And then I think we talked about it earlier as well, the QC and release capacity. Like the team really invests in manufacturing equipment upfront, maybe adequately, but may not be doing it so for analytical throughput or QA review. So that bottleneck migrates downstream, and that's a big surprise. So the companies that really perform best treat supply chain as a control tower problem. It's not a shipment problem. And this is where actually in the recent past, I've been supporting a lot of our leading CGT companies with the control tower concept for supply chain orchestration and logistics.
I love it. Okay. Before we get to Emily's question, Omkar, I have one more question for you, because a lot of Cell and Gene's readers, our registrants, Cell and Gene, the podcast listeners, they're smaller biotechs. And so to that particular company, how can they prioritize investments when they just can't solve every supply chain risk and problem at once?
Great question. I think we talked about it at the beginning as well, right? We are limited as a smaller biotech, you are limited in terms of, or constrained by timelines and fundings and et cetera. So the way I think of it is you prioritize by patient impact, regulatory risk, and reversibility. So that flexibility to reverse. So if you apply these 3 filters, honestly, it can help you identify where to act or what to prioritize first. So in my opinion, the first investment should really be end-to-end visibility. So even without a full-blown enterprise platform, as a company, you need reliable view on your patient slots, material status, capacity, batch status, release testing. And I sound like a broken record right now, but these are some of the biggest pain points. And having that data first attitude really helps you build that data pipeline from the start so that you can really leverage that capability in your overall operations. And that shouldn't be an afterthought. The second biggest thing, I think Zoe also referred to it, is the COI and the COC risk, right? For patient-specific therapies, that is non-negotiable. So that to me would be the second biggest investment. It cannot depend on manual reconciliation or just like tribal knowledge that is owned by 2 or 3 minds. And then the third piece, and I don't want to keep going on this, but like another really important one is this whole concept of dual sourcing or risk management of, a couple of materials, the high impact, high value, the materials that have the longest lead times, trying to ensure that you have sufficient access, even if that means that you're building redundancies from day one, that is okay. But I think those are important. So the mistake in spreading this limited investment evenly across all risks is obviously palpable, and that is not what I would recommend. So instead, using those three lenses filters that I mentioned above, find the 2 or 3 failure modes that could stop dosing and that could compromise patient safety. Solve those first. Everything else is just optimization.
Terrific advice, especially for the small emerging biotech and certainly all size cell and gene therapy biotech. So thank you, Omkar. Before we move on to manufacturing, network design, and commercial readiness, which I think would be a great spot to answer Emily's question that came in. Before we get to that, Zoe, I have one last question for you as we wrap up our talking points here. Process consistency, product comparability, constant concerns as companies scale. So how do you balance the need for standardization with the reality that processes often evolve rapidly during development?
So I'll start with, you have to build a standardization around the critical quality attributes and your process controls, right? And you should also focus on maintaining product comparability while you don't forget you can still enable your innovation. Use a science and a risk-based approach when implementing your process improvement. And also, most importantly, like Omkar mentioned in the very first question, you also have to follow the product lifecycle management principles to address your critical quality attributes, critical process parameters identified throughout your development stage. And also ensure your changes are supported by your robust data, and also focus on your process and assay suitabilities.
Great advice. Thank you. All right, I want to now start talking a little bit about manufacturing, networking design, and commercial readiness. And, once a company starts thinking beyond a single program or a single site, the questions become even more complex. So let's talk a little bit about manufacturing, network design, commercial readiness. Omkar, before we kind of jump into what I wanted to talk to you specifically about, Emily asked a question that's pertinent to CDMOs. Now, a lot of our registrants today in our audience, they are part of the developer community who partner very closely with CDMOs, and that's what a lot of Cell and Gene's audience cares about is if they're not doing in-house manufacturing, of course, partnering with a CDMO.